Welcome. It's wonderful to see so many people. Please feel free to move into the close to the front of the church. It's quite all right.
Front of the church.
We got a couple of empty places up here, and it's just lovely to see you all here for the second of our Worthington Care Speaker Series events. Before I introduce our distinguished speakers, I'd like to do some thank yous. First of all, to Dr. Julia Kaiser. Where'd my bag? Can I steal your bag?
It's still my bag.
Thank you. Dr. Julia Kaiser, who's Worthington Optical Wellness, provided these lovely bags that have a lot of information in them about how you can help prevent drug abuse in our community. Inside the bag is another bag. This is a special one. This is a pouch that you could put in prescription drugs that you no longer need, add water, shake, and put in the trash. So it's a wonderful way to dispose of prescription drugs, especially any kind of painkillers, opiates, get them out of the house. Easier to carry a bag. As well as you'll hear tonight, we have a wonderful 24/7 drug disposal box at police headquarters. So in addition to your pouch, remember you can always bring them to police headquarters in Worthington. Also, we'd like to thank St. John Damien Church for the lovely dinner. And St. John's Episcopal Church for our desserts. So we had split offerings this time. And once again, Kroger has provided us our bottled water, which we really appreciate. And I'd also like to thank and acknowledge the Drug Safe Worthington Coordinating Council members who are here tonight. Scott Holmes is Scott, and Monica Patton is here. Way in the back, and Devin Bilski is here. There's Devin. Thank you. One of the three of the many folks who help Drug Safe Worthington make a difference in the community.
Distinguished has ever been used in my line of work. I'm just saying, I don't know about you, but that was one of those things.
They call us all kinds of titles.
I'm sure they do. So I really appreciate everybody being here tonight. And you know, again, for Nancy introducing us and everything. We have a lot of information to go over, and we want to be sure that if you have questions, feel free to ask during. We'll save time at the end too if you have any questions. If those of you in the back have trouble hearing us, let us know, and we'll talk a little bit louder, because as the night goes on, we might get a little parched. So anyhow, we're going to just jump into 3 focus areas. So we're going to talk a little bit about the trends of substance use here in the schools. That will be my part. And then Jerry obviously is going to talk about the use in the community. We're going to touch on all those, including some of the laws, especially hosting parties that have alcohol being served to minors. Then we'll do
social media. So we'll talk a little bit about cyberbullying, some of the sexting that we see in our schools, online threats, which if you've been reading the newspapers, it's not just Worthington, but all communities are really have seen an explosion in this area. Some of the social media apps that are out there that we have to deal with, and unfortunately our schools are dealing with on a daily basis, and some of the laws regarding bullying, sexting, and online threats.
excellent. And then the last part will be some parenting tips, and we'll throw those in at each section so that you know, hopefully give you guys some advice to think about. But we also want to talk a little bit about the social, or the pitfalls of social norming, and especially when it comes to alcohol. And I'm just going to jump in and say this one at this point in time. So we have these events, we offer these events for 2 years, and I'm most appreciative of those of you that are here. It's awesome. But I would have to say too that if we're a nonprofit organization, or we were trying to get money, raise money, if we simply added the words cocktails in conversation, we'd be sold out. And so that is just an image of what we're dealing with. So my heart hurts for families and for parents who you are up against a lot. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. Also for parents to find their voice and stand their ground. What is acceptable in your family and in your household may not be what's acceptable for, Leave It to Beaver down the street, okay? That's we think about Leave It to Beaver days, and they're just not like that. We're more like is it Kardashians or the Jersey Shores or whatever. So that's more of a nightmare for you poor parents. And then we'll also be sure to give you practical pointers for communication and then some resources as well. Our goal is to have this on YouTube. I'm just about done with Javier Sanchez. He was our speaker last month, and that will be available. Drug Safe Worthington will have a YouTube channel, so you'll be able to go and get that information or listen again if you missed something. And we'll also include resources at the end of our presentation on that YouTube channel. So
I would like to say, as we're going through the presentation, if we get to something you got a question, this is an open forum, so we don't know what you're thinking about. We're gonna give you some tips and take you down the path of what we're seeing, but please don't hesitate to ask questions, okay?
So how many of you have heard of JUULing? Okay, there we go. How many of you know a whole bunch about it? How many of you have never seen one before? Because I got a stash, I might pass it around. I got 4 bags. These 4 bags have got to come back. I'm just saying. So, just saying. I don't want to smell any mango in the back of the area. All right, no mango. So, this was just a genius invention by 2 gentlemen in Silicon Valley who were tired of meeting outside on their cigarette break. And they decided to come up with something that they could actually hit at their computers while working, and nobody would realize that they are getting their nicotine fix at that point in time. With that said, the story also goes is they never ever intended for this to get into the hands of kids, of minors. However, in the process of manufacturing it, they came up with mint flavor. They came up with mango, seems to be quite popular. Actually, there's a whole mango one here that's not even open because they got it confiscated here at school before that. So in 6 months' time, the government has stepped in and they're actually going to make it illegal for them to have the flavorings, okay, which is great. But if you have a young high school student who has any bit of entrepreneurial skills, they're going to buy up the market and then sell them to their friends. And I'm working with that right now. So we've got a couple kids in our schools, our high school, that were quite the entrepreneurs and bought up a lot and have been trying to sell them to their friends. So what this looks like, it's a simple USB drive. So you can put it into your computer and your teacher's like, oh, look, they're being so studious. They're studying really hard. They brought their little jump drive or flash drive to school. And then what you have is this little pod. And so the little pod has 2 holes in the end of it. Stick it in there, this becomes charged, put it inside there, and then they just can hold it in their hand, and then they would just take the vapor in, hold it for a length of time, then you won't see any of the vapor come out, basically, okay? If you go to YouTube tonight, I would suggest that you go to YouTube and look up vaping trails and vaping tricks, and you will find probably 900 or more videos of kids who learn how to blow neat little things and shapes, which then our kids look at and are like, I want to be able to do that, and they have absolutely no regard as to what is in these little pots. So they were very easy to purchase online through the actual JUUL company. I did that back in August. I could pull it up here on the school site. Of course, I said I was over 18 by just a few days. So I said I was over 18, I could set up and have it delivered to one place, and then I could buy it with an Amazon gift card, which is exactly how your kids do it. That has now changed. In January, they started changing their process, so the JUUL company is trying to be really aggressive and trying to limit the use of these by minors, but unfortunately, the damage is done. We already have the minors. So it's one of our most #1 violation at the high schools and middle schools is kids vaping with the JUULs. So this one a little bit bigger, okay? This is called a Halo. This is about $150, really fancy, okay? Somebody was really upset that they lost this and got confiscated by the school. You will be able to see a clear liquid in here, clear fluid. And I should mention this on the JUULs too, is what's happening now is kids have found a way to put THC in here. There's liquid THC, which is the active ingredient in marijuana. So while we're at school thinking they're just getting straight nicotine, okay, if we catch them or whatever, it could actually be dabbing or it could be the straight THC fluid, okay, that goes into this. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass these around. These are just different charging devices that kids have. These things do smell. I will say it's no fun having them in my office. I put them in, hide them underneath there. Here are lots of pens, numerous pens. That are used in a different type called Vuse. And so the kids can, again, put the e-juice in here, and that, again, is, my concern is, you know, not just the nicotine, but also the liquid THC, that can be passed out as well. So, yes, question?
So where would somebody buy like the liquid THC?
Okay, any water beds and stuff, any vape store, any online store. So when you start cruising around.
It's not illegal?
If you're 21 or 18, no, because some states it's 18 still, other states it's 21, but you just lie. So you just click on it or you have a fake ID. And so then you can go and get those things.
Not the vape, or the THC.
Oh, I'm sorry, the
Yeah,
THC, I'm sorry, I thought you said the vape.
No, like the oil.
That's
THC
important.
is currently illegal.
I missed a lot of stuff.
Oh, no wonder she's like, that's on that, I mean, she's not believing me. Don't believe me, because I'm telling the truth. So no, you're right, the liquid THC is different, and they, unfortunately, there are places that you can buy that. In 2013, I was in the Florida Keys, and I was driving back and had to fill up the gas car, or the tank before I turned it in. To the rental car, turned it in, and I'm right there at the register was this little thing that said e-juice, but it had a pot leaf on it. And I'm like, I looked at the person working there, I'm like, wait a minute, e-juice, and I said, but this is, it has a pot leaf on it. She goes, uh-huh. And I go, is this liquid THC? She goes, uh-huh, what's wrong with that? And I was like, okay. So they have those things kind of hidden, embedded. The other thing that kids do is they take pot, quite the science project, they turn it into dabs, okay? And dabs, what are dabs? Okay, so dabs.
I knew this was gonna happen.
Great question.
That's the next question.
Great question. Let me see if I have that on there. Okay, so dabs is when, back in the day, people used to have like pot, and they would, the hashish and the hashish oil, okay? So what happens is they take, and you can find this on YouTube as well, how to make dabs, okay? Like, you know, dabbing, that pose, that's all has a whole underlying marijuana theme to it, but nobody catches on to that. Exactly. Look at that face.
My 8-year-old is down.
Yeah.
They're all.
Yeah, so, anyhow, so dabbing is when you take the THC, the actual pot plant, and you extract, through a process, you extract all of the oil out of it, and then you put it in.
You use butane, so the fire folks love this stuff.
Yeah.
So you actually take it, compress it into a cylinder, and then you run pure butane through it, and then you put it into a dish and you cook it. So you cook it on a stove. So again, you're cooking marijuana extract, oil from it that's been extracted using butane, and then you put it on your stove, hopefully not your stoves, right? And so you cook it until it becomes a beautiful yellow color. So you'll hear them say it's honey, you'll hear them say dab.
Earwax.
Earwax. I mean, it
Beeswax.
looks like wax, okay? So if you see wax around the house and it's yellowish or very pretty, depending on how pure it is, if it's very pure and almost see-through but yellow like honey, kids will then take that and they'll use these devices, or they also take a modified bong, which then they take a glass. Those of you that know what bongs are, basically water devices to smoke dope, right? So where the normal little piece is where you put the dope, okay, where you smoke it, you take and put a glass ball on it, okay, and you superheat the glass ball, and then you put the dab on it, and then you go ahead and suck it through the water because it's extremely hot, and then you get about 98 to 99% pure THC. This is not the dope from the 1960s and 70s, okay? This is totally different than what you're expecting. So dab is almost pure THC. It's the same process that's gonna be used very shortly for medical marijuana, because you can't use combustion, you can only use vaping, okay? So, or you can eat it, so, or cook with it if you're not a smoker, so.
So how does this have to do with?
It had to do with the whole drug culture. It's like all on the whole drug culture, yeah. And so in the whole aspect, now so he explained the whole process, and truthfully, that could be like a series on its own. And again, I encourage you to go to YouTube because you can find out a lot about YouTube, and the way these things are created. So what happens though is that you might be like, well, why would people want to do the dabbing? Because the dabbing, the high concentration of THC will last a lot longer. So for a kid just to smoke a blunt or to smoke a joint, it's only going to last, the effects of that are going to last a certain amount of time. But if they dab it, it's going to almost double or triple the length of time that they stay high, and the potency is so much stronger. And again, kind of what Jerry was saying, Chief Straight was saying, the THC today in just the regular plants and in the medical marijuana, it is so much more potent than what maybe great-grandma drank or smoked back in the day. You know, grandma's pot, whatever, in the 70s, it doesn't even compare. What was 3% is now like, I think 28, 29, and even upwards to 78% of the higher concentration of THC. So those are some of the things. So now that you have your dab, there's actually a product that you can buy online, and I just learned about this one last fall, or last spring, is that you buy this product online and it liquefies the dab. So then kids take and buy a syringe, it's a little kit, they buy a syringe, they take the liquid dab and they inject it into their e-cigs or wherever it is on their e-cigs, the JUULs. They inject that in there, and now they can be dabbing at school without anyone knowing it, vaping at school without anyone knowing it. But they think it's healthier because there's no tar. It's just vape, vape molecules. One thing that I do, you know, we have to point out, and when I'm working with kids, that you have to understand is that there are no long-term studies of the vaping. Just last year, right in May, there was a lady who was not graduating from high school. She had just gotten out. She told her parents she'd been only vaping for 3 weeks, and she ended up on a ventilator to try to dry out her lungs. So she was on high dose antibiotics. She developed a horrible reaction and was on a ventilator for a while until she was able to get off because of wet lung. And so that's the vape damaging the alveoli, sacs and all that. Real quick, signs and symptoms to look for is either that small puff, the vapor. We're not gonna see it at the high school level. A lot of people are like, why can't you find them? Because if you have kids and they come home and they say, Mom and Dad, I'm sick of people vaping in the bathroom, it's very difficult as staff members to catch them. It's not that we are not looking, but it's also very difficult for a staff member just to walk into the bathroom and be like, okay, because kids are really slick at hiding it. I had someone share that they hid it on Monday in their bra and at one of the dances. And so it's very difficult for people to find where they're hiding it. They try, but it's very hard. If you smell a fruity mint or bubblegum scent, mango, a scent, but you don't see a candy wrapper, you don't see something that goes along with that, that should be a clue that there's something going on. Kids will drink a lot of water because they're combating dry mouth that they get with vaping. So they'll go through an extraordinary amount of water, and all of a sudden, oh, it's great, you're drinking more water. Yeah, they told me to in health class, but it's because they're they're just all trying to combat that dry mouth. The other thing is anything that pens, thumb stylus, like I shared with you, some of the stuff that's been confiscated here at the school last year, but anything that has 2 holes in it can be modified to be a vape for people. Behavioral signs, physical signs, more alert. Nicotine, as we know it, is classified as a stimulant, so it does cause you to be a little bit more alert, more focused. However, when you don't have it, you become more agitated. If you think back to anybody who's been addicted to cigarettes before, they kind of go through that agitation until they smoke again. Sleepiness, unusual talkativeness, disorientation, and bloodshot eyes can actually occur. 1 vape pod is equivalent to about 200 hits of nicotine, which is equivalent to a pack of cigarettes. So you can buy those little pods for about $5, so 4-pack for $20. But what happens is the kids are going through those quite rapidly, and then now they're like, I don't have any more money, what am I gonna do? And we're actually, unfortunately, starting to see kids starting to go back to tobacco smoking cigarettes. The JUUL company alone, back last year, owned 52% of the stock market. Just October, they announced they had 72% of the stock market in sales. The other thing is that 81% of the new smokers all got hooked on vaping. So while they were trying to sell it for somebody to cut down smoking, it has introduced it. 81% of people who have never smoked before are now vaping. Any questions on that? Sorry about that.
The kids are masking it also. If they're driving already, if they're 16, they're gonna put scents in their cars to throw you off. So they'll just all of a sudden have the little Christmas trees hanging off their mirrors, or they'll have scents or dryer sheets underneath their seats. So it's not like they're trying to be cool, they're trying to mask whatever mom and dad might look into. So anyways, if you suddenly see that, it's not automatic, okay? Some of them just think it is cool, but that is one of the techniques that they're using for not only vaping, but also if they're smoking dope.
Yeah, if they're smoking, yeah, marijuana. So there's just some of the additives that are in. I've already kind of covered this, so we'll jump. Any questions or anything? All right, so these are some of the other things that we see here at the high school or know about at the high school. Or, you know, I hear from kids or whatever, and you have to understand, this is probably every single high school across the nation and some of your college campuses. I was having a discussion today. I didn't know Bluffton was a drug-free, alcohol-free, smoke-free campus, college campus, and one of our teachers graduated from there. We're working on curriculum, and he was like, yeah, that didn't stop anybody. And it was like, oh, okay, that's interesting to know. But over there we have little gummy bears. Anybody have any idea what we do with the gummy bears, or kids might do with the gummy bears? No, that's actually going to be this one, is the marijuana. But before we take the alcohol, we might just pour alcohol into those gummy bears because they become super absorbent and they get big and puffy, and nobody's going to know that. So you might be able to sit in a class and take that, or at a sporting event, and have some gummy bears that are a little bit fat. They do it with Jolly Ranchers as well, and I think if I related it to Jello shots, how many of you know about Jello shots? Exactly. So that would be, there you go. So this is the other thing here. The concern with that, though, obviously, is you don't know what type of alcohol content you're getting. So if you have a student, or you have a kid who's never tried alcohol before, and they're going to go ahead and they're going to try one or two of those, they might be looking for immediate effects. And they're not going to get that immediate effect. It's going to take a while to digest in the system. But if they're like, well, that didn't work, those two didn't work, I'm going to take 2 or 3 more. And now you're looking at somebody who has full-blown had too much alcohol and is going to be under the influence, and you have to worry about alcohol poisoning with that. In the middle, I want to share with you, this is a thing that a lot of people don't know. Alcohol is the most abused legal drug in the United States. It is also the one addiction that you can actually die from, the withdrawal. So alcoholism and the withdrawal, you can die from that, which is because your body shuts down when it becomes so dependent on it. What people don't understand is that 1 can of beer is equal to 1 glass of wine and is equal to 1 mixed drink. So sometimes you might go out to a happy hour after work, and somebody's like, well, my beer isn't as bad as your raspberry Stolies and 7. Not that that's my favorite, but just saying. And I'm like, no, they're the exact same. And they scratch their head. And so those are all equal. And now they've added the craft brew or the malt liquor. So that's new. And now everybody, what's the whole thing society's all about doing? Yep, let's brew our own beer because that's cool. So, and now we're brewing our own beer. And going back to our messaging, you guys have to understand the message that we send to kids about alcohol. It's hard to go to, I remember going to see the Crew game, and I'm watching these kids outside kicking the little soccer ball, and the parents are all sitting there with beers, clashing their beers, whatever, drinking. And these kids are like 2nd grade, kicking the ball around, but they're identifying, go to the Crew game, drink beer, and then go in. That message is being sent. It's one thing to drink responsibly, but right now, every event that we do is associated with alcohol. And to me, that's very concerning because that message is going to our kids, but it's also going to adults. They feel they have to do those things.
What we're seeing on our end with these, and also with keeping you out of the loop, is the kids know that if they use vodka or if they use Everclear, and yes, they can get Everclear even though it's illegal in the state of Ohio, they can pick it up and then they soak it in something you can't smell, okay, or it's very difficult to smell. Same way, where do they keep it? Right there on your desk. You've got water bottles, they just pour the water out, they backfill it with vodka or Everclear. Now they've got whatever they need to go to the game or to make these products, okay? And they're not gonna probably do it at home. They're not gonna let you find it, but they'll use a water bottle or they'll use one of the water bottles that you have that you can refill. Hey, what's in there? Just water, Mom. Right? So they already know, good, they're drinking more water. No, they're not. So anyways, just so if you wonder because you can't smell something doesn't mean it's not there. So they're very clever.
Right. And it's hard too at the school level because, you know, you do see kids with water bottles and you might see them first thing in the morning in your class and they're fine, but we don't know, that teacher doesn't follow them to 7th period or 8th period to see how they're doing at the end of the day. We've had kids before that you'll hear the backpack clank and you're like, what's clanking in the backpack? You know, and you'll look in and now we have water bottles that are glass. So they're like, oh, it's just my water bottle. Well, it had to clank up against something. Oh, that was my rum to celebrate after my finals. I'm walking home. No lie. And I'm like, okay, brand new bottle of rum. Okay, Malibu rum.
Last week, one of our officers who's a reserve and also a principal at another district, he came to me and said that they had a young man who was acting crazy at the game, and so they walked up and he knew this young man, and so they have a passive breath analyzer, so it's just a little hand device they can have blow in to tell where they're at on the spectrum as far as intoxication. So kid was talking fine, everything was fine, but he was kind of slushy mouthed, so they figured he'd been drinking. So they didn't know how much. They did the PBA, is what we call him, passive breath analyzer, and he blew. And this guy's been with me for 25 years. He's one of my reserve lieutenants. And he's like, I'm looking at it, Chief, and I'm like, I'm watching the numbers and I'm watching it tick and I'm thinking, man, this thing's messed up. This device is wrong. 0.04 is illegal for a juvenile. That's the per se level, okay, if you're driving. 0.08 is the per se level if you folks are driving, okay? This kid blew a 2.4.
Oh my God.
Okay, and my reserve's like, this has gotta be wrong. And so he asked the kid, he said, how much you had to drink? He goes, I just drank a little bit earlier. Well, this kid, either one of two things. Either it's his first time drinking and he drank way too much vodka, or he's a professional, and he was 16. Okay, so these kids, if they're hooked on alcohol, they're probably training on alcohol, okay, and they're very good at what they do, and they're not gonna show normal symptoms a lot of times. If they don't, there's just some of these kids that have been drinking so long that you're gonna be able to communicate and you're not gonna think anything's wrong with them. So that was Friday, one of Friday's games. So anyways, it's supposed to be comatose at 3.
I was gonna say,
Potentially
that's,
dead.
yeah, that's getting, for a teen,
Yeah.
that's getting really close to be, yeah. So, and then the scary part too is sometimes we have kids come home, they're intoxicated, and then the parents are like, they don't know what to do, because they don't realize that even though they have already vomited, and even though that they are, you know, they seem like they're okay, but they vomited, their blood alcohol level continues to rise. Their blood content continues to rise. If it shuts down that back part of that brainstem, you know, you're looking at someone who will either, you know, pass away, or they could be stuck in the state of a 2-year-old or 3-year-old. And we don't talk about that with kids. We don't explain to them, you know, what the levels are and understanding those, and they just think they're out to have a good time. And sometimes at frat parties, I'll just roll them on their side, prop them up on their side, so that way if they vomit, they're vomiting, they're not gonna choke on it. But even that situation is not good, because that blood level can continue to rise. Questions, any questions? Yes?
So, say here at Worthington Gilmore,
Yes.
how often is a kid being caught with a vaping device?
Oh, with a vaping device?
What's the prevalence of in this stuff?
You know, that's a really hard to come up with. I will tell you, we run Insight, which is a program when kids have drug and alcohol infractions at school or through sports. We usually average 2 to 3, or I'm sorry, we always have to have 3 to run the group, so we'll average maybe 3 to 5. So far, September, October, November, we're maxed out at 10 kids each group, and we haven't even got to November yet. And
Is that for the district or is that for this building?
That is for the district. So, and right now, those are only high school referrals. I have not had any middle school referrals this year. Last year I did though. So I wish I could give you a more specific. Now, I will tell you too, I did this presentation on vaping for the bus drivers, which, like, I don't know, the light bulb clicked off, and I'm like, they're the first line of defense to see our kids. They know whether we're gonna have those kids are gonna have a good day or a bad day based on what they came from that day. And I told them about, you know, when they check their bus and things like that, and I've already had 4 reports from bus drivers of kids with vaping things on their bus. So I just turn those into the deans, and if the deans, you know, investigate or do anything about it, that's with them. So great question though. The last one really quickly, that's medical marijuana, okay? And if you have ever had, I think it's called hair bow, is that the name of it? okay? Packaging is the exact same, looks the exact same. So this is something you have to be careful of, because you might be like, oh, those are just gummy balls, those are hair balls, but the colors and everything mimic what's already out there and on the shelves. So it makes it kind of, you're not really paying attention, it could make it easy for someone to get a hold of that. We have kids who have medical marijuana or marijuana they've gotten shipped here from California, Colorado,
Washington,
yeah,
Colorado.
Washington. So it's in their hands. And now when we go to legalize it, well, I don't want to say legalize it recreationally, medically, it's going to be the same situation here. So just kind of like alcohol. Alcohol still finds a way into our kids' hands, and they're not old enough to buy it. They're still breaking the law.
I always like to point out on these, who wants these? Who's the first person that's gonna want one of those?
Little kids.
Kids. So if we have irresponsible adults or forgetful adults, and they happen to leave these on the table, and a 2 or 3 year old walks by, they're gonna take advantage of them. So I just, making them good tasting and then mixing it with kids is gonna be a problematic, I think.
But one of the things I was researching, and we'll talk about it, it says, the secondhand smoke for kids and everything, and they also mentioned pets, but I left that out. But so I'll put my backpack on my table, and I have those RX bars, they're pretty good. I don't know if you guys have ever had like 3 ingredients or whatever. My dog can figure out a way to get on the table, in the backpack, unzip it, and then just leave me nothing but the wrapper. So I'm just saying, I'm sure if I had something like a gummy on the floor too, that would be quite toxic for the dog. Other things that are available, the blue pills over there are an example of Ritalin, Adderall, or Concerta. Does anybody know what that medication is?
For ADHD.
Yep, it's for ADHD. So it is a stimulant. So a child who is diagnosed with ADD or ADHD already has the brain chemistry that goes super, super fast. If they take that medication, being a stimulant, it actually works with their brain chemistry and it slows them down and allows them to focus. Okay, so that's why we prescribe that to them. However, a lot of kids who take the ADD medication, they don't like it. They say it just doesn't make them feel good, it makes them feel nothing, it bothers their stomach, it keeps them from wanting to eat because it is a stimulant and that does have the effect. So sometimes they don't take those, but the parents think they're taking those, and those can be sold at schools. I had a student like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when I first started this, told me that around finals week she could sell those for she would make $250 in a week by selling those around finals week. And she was like, and then my Christmas is paid for. She said, I don't have to buy anybody anything because there's my money for it. And nobody ever knew about it. Of course, she shared all this information well after she had graduated. So she was kind of smart. But, so we do have that. We also have kids college campus. It's the most abused drug, I think, right now on college campus. Kids do it to study. They pull the all-nighter, and they stay up and they study. But then kids also realize, if I use that and drink alcohol, I can stay up even longer. But what they're not understanding is the message they're saying to the brain. Because alcohol is a depressant, that's a stimulant. The brain is like, I don't know which one to do, which one to believe. And so we have a lot of people who get in accidents and make poor choices under the influence of that. Xanax is the next one, anti-anxiety medication. So we have a lot of people that are prescribed that, and they need it, okay? But what happens is they might lose track of what they have. That's why those doTERRA bags that are inside your thing are so important. If you're prescribed, sometimes people have just horrible situation, death of a parent, a sibling or something like that, or a divorce, and they are like, I need something to get me over the hump or whatever. Xanax can be prescribed to help with that anxious moment in time. And they may take a few and then they're like, I don't need any more, and they just mistakenly leave it in their whatever, medicine cabinet. And now their kids can get them. Kids might not know that you score them, that you break off those. They're called ladders, different colors have different names. School buses for the yellow ones, the ladders, trying to think, green monsters would be one as well. And kids take those. A few years back, I had a student tell me, Ms. Pavisol, the withdrawal from that is worse than heroin. Like, how do you know that? And he's like, because I can't quit using those. And I'm like, okay, and you try to get him the help, you try to do everything you need, and then there's, to some point, there's nothing you can do. Mom tried to do everything she could, tried to send him to a rehab facility at a cost of $30,000 a month to go to a facility. Think about that. He needed at least 3 months. She was able to come up with $50,000, $60,000 for a couple months. They said, listen, he's made great strides. He's doing really well. He's not smoking. His body's getting back clean. He said, we need to send him to a facility for for an entire year, $150,000 for a year. Mom's like, I can't afford it. I can't take out a mortgage again. I can't do it. His dad won't help out. She's like, I don't know what to do. Situation unfortunate, the young man has been shot 3 times, survived all 3 times. Those were all on drug deals. And has a felony warrant out in another area for trying to go to a school district to see his girlfriend, his then girlfriend. His then girlfriend unfortunately passed away just a few weeks ago to a heroin overdose and left a 5-month baby behind. And we don't know where that poor kid is. And I go back to that conversation when he was just a freshman, sophomore, when he came across, my desk. And it's sad and it's frustrating, but it's stuff we don't talk about. And we need to, we really need to. Cocaine is down there, it's a little powder form, so while we're spending all of our time as a community talking about opiates, and some more opiates and the opioid addiction and fentanyl, we're forgetting the fact that cocaine is now the next go-to after your Ritalin. It's a stimulant. So now people are using cocaine, and we're starting to know about cocaine being used here and there at parties or wherever and in our community. And what people don't understand is that addiction to cocaine is going to rise up, and there's also fentanyl potentially in the cocaine. You don't know what you're getting. So that's the other one. This last one is heroin. Again, we've talked a lot about. I'll be truthful, I've not heard of any of our kids using opioids or any prescription medications in probably 3 or 4 years. So, which is a great thing. But that means that we as a society and as a country, we look at what to prevent, and we don't look at to prevent, we look at how to treat after the fact. It's just like we spend all of our dollars and all of our budget on what to do once the person has the addiction. We never look at the protective factors that we need to do in the prevention programs and putting money in those things to make a kid be like, why would I want to use those things? But we're a little backwards on that. Same with healthcare.
In contrast, we had one overdose at Starbucks the other day that been there from 11 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning and then overdosed at 4. So it's here. Okay, we saved the individual with 2 shots of Narcan and got him back, but it's here. We see it quite frequently, so it's not as frequent as some other areas of the city, but we still see it. So it's available, and might switch to the next one, I think.
There you go.
So what are we seeing here? Of course, alcohol is the #1 thing, but we're seeing heroin, marijuana, pharmaceutical drugs. Everybody passes their stuff along. The inhalants, cocaine, LSD, bath salts, and MDMA or Molly. The cartels are pretty smart. They make a lot of money, so they have a lot of experts. They have great scientists. They have great engineers. So they have all the money to pay for it. So what are they doing right now? They're getting rid of heroin. Heroin costs a lot of money. You have to process it. So you gotta grow it, somebody's gotta pick it, somebody's gotta process it, then they gotta get it across the border. So what they were doing last year is what we heard, is they were actually taking and they were moving the cocaine, and they were also sending up a free sample, I don't think it's up there, no, methamphetamines. So unfortunately, Mexico and some of the other states down south, or countries down south, don't have an EPA. They don't have to worry about chemical and how to dispose of chemicals. So rather than pay people to grow this stuff, they can mix all the methamphetamines they want with chemicals. Very easy to make. If you do it wrong, you end up with TATP, which blows up, so there is that. But just a small difference. But what they were doing was taking the heroin, and when they smuggled it up, they were providing free samples of methamphetamine. Why? Because methamphetamine you don't have to produce, you don't have to grow. You just ship it and get somebody addicted. Well, if you get them addicted with meth, it's actually it's a little bit longer of a high, but you don't have to worry about all of the issues of people overdosing normally with heroin. You don't get as many overdoses, so that keeps your customers around longer. So again, this is a business, and that's how it's treated, and they're finding ways to combat it. Cocaine right now and methamphetamine are the 2 new ones on the market. I mean, meth is up here, and then cocaine, and then heroin. So So heroin's falling off the market right now, so that's the new trend you're gonna see. But heroin's still around, it hasn't disappeared. So, and oxycodone and some of the other items that are out there are still very popular. But what you're gonna see now is meth's gonna be the new one, and they're making cocktails. So these people that get this stuff are not trained chemists a lot of times. So if I got a little cocaine, I got a little bit of methamphetamine, and I've got some, cocaine, methamphetamine, and heroin, powdered heroin, and maybe some fentanyl. I just mix it all together, okay? And that's what we're seeing the alerts on. These people don't know what the heck they're doing, so they throw too much fentanyl, and you're dead, okay? So we just had an alert last week, and in southern central Ohio, down in the south end, we had a batch that was made too strong with fentanyl, and we had people collapsing. So we get these alerts from public health, and all the police departments and public health and fire departments are all tied together now. And so we'll get these notices that they're bad batches. It's not about trying to arrest all these folks, it's trying to tell them, hey, whatever these people are mixing right now, it's gonna kill you. And the problem with fentanyl, if it's not put in there correctly, or if there's too much, or if it's fentanyl, which is 100 times more powerful than fentanyl, which is 50 times more powerful than heroin, if it's mixed incorrectly, and we get there, or fire gets there to treat these individuals. I know last year there was one case with an individual who's built up a tolerance, and it took 16 hits of Narcan to get the individual back. Well, if it's 16 hits at $45 a piece for Narcan, again, this is tax money, and I'm all for saving people, but they depleted a whole section of Dayton, all the Narcan. So all these units were coming, trying to provide Narcan, and they actually depleted a lot of the trucks. So how about the first time user? I'm just throwing this out to you. The first time user that just tried heroin or just tried some drug, you could deplete a whole section with one individual. So that's some of the concerns that are out there that are being raised. So anyways, all of our trucks and all of our cruisers have Narcan, and we're all trained to use it. But I just like to point that out. You don't know what these people are mixing with this stuff. And the problem for first responders now is we don't test white powder. We can't. It could be baking soda, it could be fentanyl. And literally, one little piece of fentanyl that big, just getting on the skin of an officer could kill him. So, I mean, we've got Timex suits, we've got basically first responder gear. We have to completely rubber up and put mask on to even put this stuff into evidence. So, pretty scary stuff. So, but that's the new mix, is we're seeing all kinds of cocktails is what we call them, and they just mix stuff up.
Is that what was in the prison like a month ago, when all those people?
You know, I heard it was fentanyl, but I don't know if it was a cocktail. I never did hear all the different ingredients. So it usually takes a while before they can break them all down. So it's not like CSI. You know, they don't.
They do it in 60
They don't
minutes.
do an analogy. They don't do it in 60 seconds. And trust me, I've been to BCI. They have a nice lab. The pretty colors aren't there, and all the beautiful people, and yeah. So that's definitely TV, folks. So it takes a little while to get all that toxicology out.
Is Narcan only effective against heroin?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is the Narcan only effective against heroin?
Heroin and any opiates.
Opiates.
Yeah, any opiates. So, and it really doesn't have a lot of concerns. I mean, there aren't after effects. So most of the time, if they're unconscious and it's not something that's natural, they'll go ahead and shoot and see if it is. I mean, it's worth the chance of trying to bring somebody back.
Yeah, because it does not have that side effect to it. So you can have somebody that's, you know, maybe strung out on cocaine, and you're not sure, and you know, you're looking at all the signs and symptoms they have, and they'll use the Narcan, and it doesn't affect them. It's not a negative effect for that person, but for the Narcan, it's life-saving. So, or for the opioid, it's life-saving. So time-wise, we're getting tight on time. So we do have the legalization of marijuana. Go ahead. This is all you.
It's coming right now. I'm sure if you watch the news at all, House Bill 523 was passed. It went into effect September 8th. So it says 16. It was actually 18.
Well, I think
Oh,
there's something in
okay.
16, they were supposed to start selling it.
Start selling it. They
And
were
that
supposed
has
to.
actually been pushed back.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
pushed back. So right now, they're not doing the referral cards. They haven't passed them out under the Ohio's Medical Marijuana Control Program. They haven't passed out the cards. They're not a licensed prescription. They can't be because federal law prohibits medical marijuana or any marijuanas. So I know there's been discussion about changing that. But they are getting the grow houses ready. And if you watch closely at some of the grow operations that are being shown on TV, you'll see that the marijuana has little specialty items next to it. So when we talk about different strengths or different types, they're identifying that by THC level, so they'll identify and be able to tell the physicians that are approving this how much THCs within each one of those, whether it's leaves or whether it's oils, which are the two things that are gonna come out. So it's coming, and so once it gets out, we'll see what happens, because there's gonna be all kinds of additional issues that we're gonna see as far as driving. We're gonna see issues when it comes to medical licenses. I think you're gonna be very amazed. I know Colorado's seen some of this from the law enforcement reports that we've seen, and the media hasn't put some of this out, but you're gonna see kids get involved with this because people are gonna leave it out, and they'll try to minimize some of the effects and some of the causes that you're gonna, cause and effects that you're gonna see in the community as a result of this. So I anticipate a lot more accidents and a lot more disturbances with people that are gonna be using this, because unfortunately, in my business, people do things they're not supposed to. So, we'll see it. So, should be interesting.
That kind of takes us right into the concerns within the community. So again, it goes back to the marketing and the messaging, and so when we work with kids who do have they've been smoking marijuana, and you're trying to talk to them, and they come to Insight, and their mom's like, I try to tell them they shouldn't smoke it, but really they've done all this research, and kids really love to do research. They want to research, they want to justify that what they're doing is okay. Because if I can find one person out there to say that me smoking pot under the age of whatever, 21 or at any age is okay, then what I'm doing is all right. What they don't realize is that a lot of them are getting their information from hightimes.com, and it's like, no, you're not looking at the big picture. And so it's difficult, because the messages that they're getting, and they're like, well, why would a doctor prescribe it if it wasn't okay for you? The one thing is, the stuff that's going to be prescribed, none of that is FDA approved. None of it is. However, we already have medical marijuana that is being used, and the stuff that is being used now is all FDA approved. So we have people who take it for seizure disorders and who do this. This is putting us one step closer to legalizing it as a state. So it ties into that messaging, and we don't ever talk about the negative benefits. We don't talk about the brain, that it does affect your brain. It causes amotivational syndrome. The younger that you use it, the higher chance you have of being addicted, just like with alcohol. But we don't get those messages to the kids like we need to. Again, we talked about accessibility and the negative effect on the teenage brain. The youth and children exposure to marijuana smoke. This came from an article that was in Colorado. Increase in DUIs and deaths related to DUIs. And kids were like, well, you can't die from marijuana. You can't die, but you can do something that causes your death. You can drive and not drive properly. You're under the influence of marijuana. Sometimes kids do have, and not just kids, but adults, can get really high strands of the marijuana and actually have a panic attack, induced panic attack. And they go to the hospital and they're like, I can't breathe, and they're totally panicked, and the mom's like, I have no idea what's going on, or that, they have no clue. And then when they get the tox screen back, they realize that they're under the influence of pot. And that's kind of mirroring message.
Yeah, the mirroring message to me is, if and I know that people are gonna use it for chronic pain and what other identified symptoms are out there that are gonna be approved to use medical marijuana, but you're gonna be sitting there and you're gonna use edibles, or you're gonna cook brownies, and I'm being honest, you're gonna cook all kinds of edibles at home, or you're gonna use vaping, okay? So vaping, edibles, or cooking, and all those items are gonna be around the house. What are the kids gonna say, and how are you gonna justify it to your kids that it's not okay for them, but it's okay for you? So that's my concern. Kids are gonna mirror their parents, or somebody they respect. So That's my number one concern is how do you tell your kids, I can't buy a dime bag for Johnny, but you can get one at the medical marijuana dispensary, and it's okay for you to make brownies, but I can't make brownies.
That's true of so many things.
It is.
In life. I mean,
It
you
is.
can't drive a car either when you're 10. You can't have a drink till you're 21. I mean, I struggle with that whole concept.
It's true, but the other thing too, I saw a presentation last year and they had somebody talk about when we give kids medicine. So oftentimes we're really quick, the kid has a fever, okay, we're gonna give them medication, we'll send them off to school because we don't have somebody at home to take care of them. We don't have that built-in childcare or whatever it is, so we know, we're gonna give that Tylenol. Depending on how you give that child that medication, just here it comes, a super great fever, you know what I mean? And it's like, this medicine's gonna make you feel better. That's a message that we're sending to kids. And even though it's a very small and slight message, it should be, look, you have a fever, and so we've tried, sometimes we should let nature run its course and try to go, but you get those really high fevers and then you get that medication, but you shouldn't celebrate the fact that I'm gonna give you medicine and now you're gonna feel better, or you have a cough, and it kind of ties into, in looking at the whole mental health thing and the whole, the people being diagnosed with anxiety and depression and things like that, but we can go to a doctor and say we're feeling this way, and I'll use me for an example. I had a physical in September. I'm struggling. My dad's really ill. I know he's going to pass away. I'm going to become the orphan, and I'm like, I got to deal with that. Work is super stressful, and I'm just like, and it was really, we had all this rain. If you guys remember all that rain back in September, rain. So I go to the doctor, I tell her everything, and I tell her just a little bit about my dad's story and the whole scenario, and she's looking at me, she goes, listen, I can prescribe you something if you'd like, just to get you over the hump. And I looked at her, I said, listen, I really appreciate that, but all I need is sunshine, a day on the water fishing, and I'm gonna be fine, And so she's like, okay, but if it gets bad enough, so I felt like I needed to share with her so that if I do call up and say, look, I can't get out of bed, 6 months down the road, my dad passes or whatever, that I have that conversation with my doctor. But I also know that I needed sunshine, I needed to get out on the water to fish, and I needed to have things that I could do healthy-wise that was gonna make me feel better, And so that's exactly what happened. That weekend was a beautiful weekend, and it made a huge difference. But with our kids, we don't say, hey, go for a walk. We don't say, hey, get your head up off your phone. And I haven't even talked about the phone yet, but that's like I hate to say it, but it's a cancer in itself. And so those are things that we need to encourage. Eating properly, when you get stressed out, you eat. I called my sister down on the way to work. I'm like, hey Sherry, I heard you were at Snyder's Donuts. She's like, how'd you know? I said, I got eyes everywhere. She's like, let me guess, you were at White Castle's. I said, yep, I was. I was picking up my Whiteys. So I like the guys in there, super nice, and I get to meet them every day and talk to them, and I get a senior's discount, so I love it. So anyhow, but it goes back to how we handle things, and that's our mirroring, and that's our messaging as parents and as adults. We need to be the protective factors, but we also need to realize how can we help our kids navigate these difficult times. So, alcohol.
I figured I'd just test your knowledge. So, state of Ohio, as far as alcohol, can parents allow their kids to drink? Anybody know? Yes, you can. You can hand them a drink. You can actually hand them a beverage at a restaurant, as long as the proprietor doesn't say no. Okay, the proprietor has the right to say no. So you're sitting with your 4-year-old. I'd like a taste of the beer. Here you go. Not a problem. Not illegal at all. Okay.
I know.
So you're at church or you're at synagogue, and so they offer wine as part of the religious ceremony. Can the kids partake? Yes, absolutely. For medical purposes, your doctor can prescribe alcohol to kids. So, absolutely. They prescribe pills. Why couldn't they prescribe alcohol?
And just so you know, because you're all freaking out about that, so being the former health teacher that I was, doctors can prescribe for some rare kidney diseases because actually beer and the alcohol in beer and the way it actually helps clear the kidneys. So don't go out and have one tonight just because we talked about that. But sometimes it has been prescribed for kids.
So now I always like to point out with moms and dads that are handing their kids a beer, that means physically handing their kids a beer or a drink, okay? That does not mean, Johnny, I'm going to the movies. Have at it. Okay, that doesn't mean you got the house and you can have all the buddies over for a house party. That's not part of this. That means, mom and dad, you could be arrested, okay? you can't willy-nilly open up the bar to them, so.
And how about if the parents go away on vacation, and then they get the call that, oh, there's a huge party at your house? Well, I had no idea, we're in Florida. Is there, like, what can happen there?
Yeah, you can actually get arrested, so you can be charged, and I always like to throw this out to folks, especially in today's litigious society. Don't think that if one of those kids gets in a car and gets in an accident, you're not going to be sued, because you will be sued, trust me. We have attorneys that come to our office every single day, every morning. We have numerous groups that come in and they get all of our accident reports, and they go through those accident reports to see exactly what transpired and whether there's alcohol involved. And if you haven't been involved in either just a plain simple injury accident or in something involving alcohol, trust me, you will be solicited randomly, because your address, your phone number, and all that information is already contained in that accident report. They will reach out and they will contact you. You don't have to call an attorney, trust me, they will call you, guaranteed. And there's select groups in Central Ohio that do it every single day. They are looking for that business, so.
Is it legal, like say, because I've heard about this, I'm in Upper Arlington, and I've heard about parents doing this, where they have a party and they think as long as the kids are here, and so they're giving other people's children drinks because they're present. That's illegal,
That's
right?
illegal.
That's what I
It's
tell them.
illegal. Yeah.
I tell them that's illegal.
And even if you maybe hand it to your son Michael, and Michael then hands it to his friend Bob, no, that's still
illegal
your,
too.
yeah.
So you don't wanna do that, 'cause that's what you're.
Okay. So social media, these are just some of the things that are up there, and I will tell you right now, the phones are, some of our middle schools have actually gotten rid of their phones. They've really put down clamps on it. McCord, I was at this meeting today, we talked about McCord, Phoenix, and I believe Worthington Way. And it's amazing to hear the comparison of this year, now that kids are not supposed to have their phone, and the discipline issues as compared to what they had last year. And it's huge. And I will be truthful with you, the kids want you to put parameters on. They really do. They want you to be their scapegoat and to take that pressure off of them. So while they might tell you, oh this is horrible, I don't have my phone, kids really, some of my high school kids, and I'm like, hey, why don't you come with us after school? I don't have my phone. What happened? My parents took me. How do you feel about your parent taking the phone? I'm glad, because I'm getting a lot more work done. And now they're never gonna tell the parents that, but they do. So we do have the social media up there. We have the different things. Obviously, if you're texting, your Twitter, your Instagram, your Snapchat, and then I forget the name of that one. What is it? Does anybody know? What is it?
It's fine.
Fine, thank you, Vine. Now, those are just ones that you might see on there. I don't have a picture of a calculator up there app, because there are a couple calculator apps up there that you're like, oh, that's cool, my kid's really studying math, they're really into math, look at this, heavy duty calculator they have on there. Nope, it's a vault. It's where they have all their pictures hidden. So, and you just think it's a regular calculator, so it's kind of in disguise. And I'll be truthful, this could be an entire hour and a half, 2 hour presentation. We're gonna work on that, and that's hopefully gonna come at the end of either sometime January, February of this year, or it's gonna be our kickoff speaker at the beginning of next year. We're trying to work on bringing somebody in that's gonna talk all about that will actually go to the schools and talk with high school students, middle school students, and get lots of information. Cyberbullying defines as including sending, posting, or sharing negative, harmful, false, or mean content about someone else. It can include sharing personal or private information about someone else, causing embarrassment or humiliation. Every day there's somebody at the high school that had somebody sent to them about them. Sometimes they come in, they talk with me in my office, and I'm like, do you have any proof? Because now we need the proof. So we need the screenshot. But if you screenshot it on Snapchat, they're gonna know you screenshotted it. And so now they're gonna come after you, they're gonna retaliate because they know you screenshotted what they said about you. So that kind of defeats the purpose for kids to say, no, I didn't screenshot it. The bottom line is we cannot control what everybody does, but we can control our response to it. So when I talk with kids, I really try to encourage them, get rid of it, block people, just drop it. Some kids find great, they'll do it for a couple weeks and everything's wonderful, and then they'll be friends with these people again, and then it all starts up again. So there's a lot to do. We work really hard at the schools to try to get to the bottom of things, investigate and get to the bottom. But for every one kid who says this person's bullying me online, once we go back and pull up all the messaging and all the data, guess what we've got? It's an equal situation. It's 6 of one, half a dozen the other, and that's tough to deal with. Sexting is another one keeping us really busy. Over at Thomas today, they had somebody come in and speak about sexting, and it is the sending explicit messages or images by cell phone. It is against the law to take, send, possess, view, and request nude photos of minors. So kids will do that. They'll take a picture and they'll be like, oh, nobody will see it because I hit delete. It's not. You once you put it on your phone, it's always on your phone. And they don't understand that. They can delete it from their phone, but it's out there in that mysterious cloud. Honestly, that cloud is huge. I mean, the stuff that's out there. So that's the sexting part of it. And then we've got the threat is a statement of intention to inflict pain, injury, damage, or other hostile action on someone in retribution for something done or not done. So we see these three things at school.
I get called on the threat situation. It's a national epidemic right now. It's not just a Worthington thing. So these kids are, I think in some ways it's a vetting process for them. I mean, they're immature and they're making comments that they don't realize the repercussions for. But some of them have intent. So how do we as school administrators and as law enforcement come to middle ground on determining when and where we're going to address it? We can't be wrong even that 1% of the time. That's the problem, folks. If we're wrong 1% of the time and we had knowledge about the incident, then we're setting ourselves up for failure. So with all of the active aggressors in the country and all the shootings you've seen, we have to take everything seriously. So it used to be, Johnny's just blowing off steam, right? He says he's gonna kill Tommy. Not anymore. I can't say that he's not gonna kill Tommy. I've got to investigate it. So think about how many kids at Thomas Worthington alone, 1,800, right? So how many here?
1,300, I believe.
1,300. So add that population, and how many of those kids, of course we know their minds aren't developed because they're not going to develop until they're 24, 25 years old, right? So how many of them are ticked off, had a bad day in one event, and want to kill somebody or stab somebody, and they just think it's funny. But how many of them are serious? How many of them have mental issues? How many of them have problems at home? Or that's the recourse they see to answer the problems they're addressing is violence. So, tough state to be in right now, but we take it very seriously. And so does the state of Ohio. So, I think it was Beechcroft just had a 18-year-old, and I can't remember, I know Dayton just had a young man that was sentenced a couple years ago. He got 8 years for pulling a fire alarm and making threats. But this young man is still, maybe he's at the sentencing stage, but he's 18. My guess is he'll probably get 3 years for saying he was gonna kill people at school. So, again, he's 18, so he just made it past that adult mark. I know that's a magical time, but really, 17 and 18? Is that a magical time? So he got into adult court, and don't think your 17-year-old can't be tried as an adult, because they can. And that's the problem with high school, is these kids can make decisions. And we've seen it in middle schools, so. And a lot of them blame it on mental illness. Around the country, active shooters, 25% of them had mental illness. The rest of them, they were fine. They're just hateful, so had problems.
Did we ever find out the information of the tox screenings or anything, like when people do those shootings for those mass murders? Do we ever get that information?
I've never seen
Okay.
whether or not they were using. I know Klebold from Columbine, and then Holmes from the Aurora theater. Both those individuals pre-planned, and they wanted to make sure they were going to areas that were soft targets. So they were actually avoiding areas that allowed open carry. So they looked around them to make sure that the areas they were going to were soft targets. And Klebold was following open carry laws to make sure that he got his job done with his partner in Columbine before they changed the law. So a lot of this is pre-planned, premeditated, so pretty sad. And with regards to the sexting we're seeing, these kids don't think there's anything to it, and I'm sure Lori sees it quite frequently, but they don't think there's anything wrong with having, and they share, they willingly share all parts of their body on the phone. Well, when you're under 18 years old, that's a felony. So when you take it and you show it to your mom and dad, or you give it to the teacher and say, here, I'll send it to you. Well, no, guess what? All kinds of problems can come out of that. So, and these kids don't think anything about it. So it's a normal thing that we see, and sooner or later it gets to somebody and it gets back to us. It gets to the school, and then the school calls us, and then we're in there and we have to do a forensic audit of the phone, and we're charging potentially kids with felonies of fifth degree. So it's pretty sad, but this is the law that oversees this pandering obscenity involving a minor. But the kids don't even think about it. They don't realize that just sending pictures like that, and again, juvenile delinquency, not criminal activity. I always like to point that out. Kids make bad choices, right? So it's delinquency, and that's how we treat it. So that's the difference with juvenile court versus adult court, is we understand that kids might not be all there yet, right? So, but
Chief
we see
Strait,
it.
really quick for the parents that are in the room right now, Laura, you can chime in on this too. If your student inadvertently receives something on their phone, because we had that incident a couple years ago here, where like it was being passed and there were kids getting it that, panicked because they were like, oh, this wasn't something I wanted. They didn't forward it, they went to the principal with it, but what should students do if they inadvertently are on the receiving end of something inappropriate?
Don't forward it to an adult. Don't forward it to mom and dad. Just hold the phone as is, contact local law enforcement, let us deal with it. Don't forward it on to anybody. And Lori said it's still in the cloud.
Right.
I mean, it's gonna be there.
Yeah, and the gentleman that spoke today over at Thomas Zachamolis, he talked about this, and he said that if a student were to go to his parents and say, look, I received this, that parent, because it happens so often, has the right, if they just want to delete it, and it's over and done with. They like his office has said they have given that permission to just delete it right then and there, and that's where it stops. As a school, anytime those things happen here at a school, it always is a call to police. It's also a call to children's services. So those are some of the things that kids need to be aware of. But these are discussions you should have with your child too. And the one thing that we don't, it's not really in here, but we have kids who might get that phone in 5th grade, and they have that sex ed talk in 5th grade, and so we have kids who unfortunately know, just like YouTube, they can get all kind of pornography sites on their phone. And there's not help groups out there for parents who like, how do I help my son or my daughter who has this addiction to pornography? Because they do it on their gaming station, they find their computers, their laptops, and it's a very difficult conversation to have because they can't come forward, they don't know where to go to get help, and we don't have help for those people. And so we are seeing more and more kids that struggle with that addiction to pornography because it's right there in front.
And the predators are all playing the games too.
Oh.
They're on the gaming systems. Why? How many of your kids play games and have headsets on? A lot of them, right? Nobody wants to hear that. But do you know what they're saying? Who they're talking to? I just had an individual in my office here who actually, her husband's a police officer, and she's concerned because she found out her son had gotten on Fortnite, was playing Fortnite, and then was picked up by a predator. And the predator and this young man were basically sexting back and forth. And he's 11, but he said he was 19. And he told the other gentleman, who is in a different part of the country, that he was an older person. And you don't know who's on the other end. Truly, you don't have a clue. But this is a police officer's son that was doing this. He had arranged, and that's how it got stopped. He had arranged to meet this individual when they found out about it. And she's like, I don't know what to do. And I said, her husband's like, he didn't know what to do. So put him in touch with the right authorities and then they can put a stop to it. But, you know, even some cops on the street, or I'm sure there's all kinds of professionals on the street that they don't see this on a routine basis and they don't know what to do. They don't know what the end game is. They're not used to working with detectives. They don't understand there's task force out there to deal with some of these situations. So if you find yourself in that situation, reach out and find out. Help's available, so there's plenty of resources, so.
We kinda covered that, did we not?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Threats,
Oh, yeah.
covered that?
This is some,
Oh,
well, I
no,
didn't
not
really
really.
talk about
Okay.
this. A lot of the kids and the things we're dealing with right now and other law enforcement agencies are the kids are getting upset and they're getting on Twitter or they're getting on some of these other websites that Lori talked about, and they're sending threats, distinct threats about causing harm, killing people, coming back and shooting up the school. And it really puts all these administrators in a real tight spot. So we see this, and a lot of these kids are getting charged with inducing panic. So I know I briefly said that there was a couple kids that have done this here in local, Central Ohio, and been charged. But it's a felony of the second degree. So it's pretty serious. I mean, people aren't thinking about, well, these kids are making mistakes. Well, again, they can really get jacked up. And if you think about the legal cost of having to defend that youth, just the legal cost alone, I mean, where are you gonna come up with the funds to take care of their indiscretions? So, have talks with your kids about how to deal and cope with issues at school. If not, there's plenty of counselors. I mean, whether it's private or if the school has mental health professionals and psychologists, reach out. If you don't know and you don't want to talk to the school officials because it involves the school, talk to an officer, talk to clergy, talk to someone and figure out how you can address this with your kids. There's help out there, but this is serious. I mean, and we're taking every one of these very serious. It's mandated now that our officers take reports and look into it. And we're not waiting until tomorrow. We need to investigate these right away. It's my job to keep your kids safe. So, think about it. Very serious stuff. I was asked to talk about this real quick, so I'm just throwing this out. I know if you've read the paper, we just did a human trafficking bust here in Worthington. We did it in Leavenworth. And we did one a couple years ago, which was right around the corner from the police department. So just to let you know, trafficking is on the rise. It normally is not involving, at least I haven't seen it here, where they're actually going after kids, local kids. But I like to point out that if you involve narcotics or you have kids that run away from home, they could be victims, okay? But what we are seeing is organized crime when it comes to these groups. Most of them are from certain countries. So the ones we've dealt with are from China. And if you look at that number right there, it's amazing how many people are in slavery right now. It's phenomenal. So most people don't think of that anymore, but the number's out there. And so 70% are female, 9 billion in profits. So this is a moneymaker, folks. And these are organized cartels that are putting this together. So the one that we did a couple years ago, we tied back to Los Angeles and the other group to New York. So we ended up making another arrest in Los Angeles. We couldn't do anything with the New York group. The one we just popped here in Leavenworth, now these people are being housed when we talk about slavery. They're not allowed to leave. There's different tiers for these groups too. So I'm trying to do this pretty quick, but some of them are just in for an actual massage, tier 1. Then you get to tier 2 where they go a little bit further based on price and they provide you with maybe a massage that goes into your erogenous zones, right? Then we get to tier 3 where it's all out, full sex. Okay, so it depends on what group you want to be in. They allow some of these people based on their experience to choose what they want to do. But then they house them in the facility. These girls lived in a office space in Leavenworth. They actually give them little tiny pools and they take their showers with a rain bucket, with a flowering bucket, and they bring their food in. So they are slaves, okay? And they're paid cash. There's no tax audit trail here. So anyways, just to let you know, they are told, a lot of times they take their passports away. They threaten their family members and say that if you don't do what you're supposed to, or if we got you over here, you're already an indentured slave. So what they do is basically say you're gonna have to pay off the travel expense. You never get there. You're never gonna get there. So, and they rotate them around. So they move them from city to city to city. So you might be here for 2 months, and then we move you to Chicago. And then they move you to LA, or they move you to the middle of Nebraska, okay? So they keep you moving. That way you can't, the law enforcement can't get a bead on what's going on and who these individuals are. So it's very difficult to track. So everybody wonders, well, why can't you get them right away? Well, it's an very deeply entrailed investigation. We have to have a lot of evidence to get into that building. And when you only have people coming and going, usually Johns, and occasionally you see the mama son or the business owner go in, then you gotta follow those individuals who come up the trail. So it's difficult to pin. It's not quick. And they've been popping up around central Ohio just nonstop. We are looking at ways to address that through ordinances. The feds have come up with some additional walls back in 2000 to give us a little strength, and we actually are using the same thing they took Al Capone down. We're looking at taxes and RICO. So racketeering charges, because we know that these people are tied excuse me, to organized crime. But they didn't take Al Capone down for a long time. I like to point that out. It took a long time to get Al Capone. Same thing with these people. And the other thing is, you don't see a lot of charges. A lot of times we can't pin these groups because we don't have direct contact with the individual that is bringing the girls there. And then we have, what, 2 victims, right? So we treat victims respectfully as victims, and we actually have to bring interpreters in to even speak to a lot of them because they don't speak our language. So, and then we have to house them, and then they have to kind of be deprogrammed because they've already been told all kinds of things, especially law enforcement in their countries. Law enforcement in their country might be abusing them as well. It's part of the payoff. So it's very difficult to get them to a point where we can release them or get them visas. So anyways, it's a long program, and it's difficult to prove, but just to let you know that we've been working on it, and we're actually trying to pass an ordinance. Council's looking at it here, and then we have some new strategies that we're going to investigate too, as far as on the civil side, to see if we can address some of these issues. So that was fast and furious.
That was fast and furious. So I'm going to give you top 10 things as fast and furious, you know, because today a lot of the information, hopefully you find it to be very helpful. But you know, along the line, we tried to give you some things to think about. But you have to remember that the most important job that you have right now is that of being a parent. And it is probably the most thankless job. You know, there are times that you're just like, you know, but it's very, very important, and it doesn't pay anything other than if you can get that healthy child to grow up to be a healthy adult, and then you're gonna have lots of great, wonderful memories. So that's one of the things. Lead by example. Focus on the messages that you're sending. It's one thing to drink responsibly. It's another thing to come home and to be inebriated in front of your kids. Or to say, yeah, I can't wait to go to happy hour because it's been such a stressful week, because kids pick up on that. And we do that, and I get that, but you want to lead by example. Allow your child to make mistakes and experience the consequences. So Bill Oliver used to do this thing called Parent's Parent. And he said how to raise a drug addict. And he gave 10 things on the best ways to raise a drug addict. He said, become your kid's lawyer. And you're like, what do you mean? And it's like when you go to bat and you try to get your kid or all of everything that your child has done and negate their consequences or lessen their consequences, they're never learning anything. So think about it, if a kid's in 7th grade or 8th grade and they forgot to bring their homework, instead of you running it to the school because they left it at home, think about that. What is gonna happen if that kid gets a 0 on that assignment or gets 50% off because it's a day late? Is it that big of a deal? It really truly isn't. But think of how that message that you're sending is, if you run all the time, you make that trip one time, guess what? You're gonna be going all the time. I had a student played basketball with us. I used to coach boys basketball at Perry, and he forgot his shoes. And I'm like, he's a starter. And I was like, dude, you know the policy, you forgot your shoes. It's your job to pack up your bag. Mom's loved me. I was like, you pack up your bag, you pack everything up, you know, but you're gonna, you don't have your shoes, you can't play. It's the same lesson I learned when I was a freshman in high school. And took the wrong jersey to my game. And so he's like, oh, this is gonna kill me. And I'm like, it might hurt you a little bit, you know, but you're gonna, it'll be okay. So we sat there and we played, and he sat on the bench next to me in his street, or on the bench with his street clothes and everything. He goes on, he ends up playing 4 years of college sport at the Ohio State University, and excels. But one of his things, he came back and he said, you know what? He said, I never forgot one piece of uniform after that. Just took one little sit as an 8th grader, you know. Now, parents were ready to kill me. They were irate. They were just like, how can you do that to me? You're ruining his life. And no, he comes back, you know, 8 years later, says this is the best thing could have happened to him because he never ever forgot his stuff. So think about those things. The expense of paying now is a lot less than when it's later. Consequences get to be much more expensive as life goes on. Also, bigger isn't always better. It's time to rethink our sense of entitlement. So we don't need to always feel our child is entitled to this or that. One of the things I've made a shift with my niece and nephews is for Christmas, I mean, that gets ungodly expensive, I'm just saying, and then they start having more little babies, and then you're like, before you know it, you're broke and your fishing budget is gone. I'm just saying, my fishing budget has been shot because now I got 3 great nieces and nephews. And so, but you know what's a better gift is to take them and do something with them. So instead of buying them something, make an experience. Now I will say I did take them all to see Phantom of the Opera, and that was a little bit expensive, but it was a great memory, and they could all buy something. I took my niece and nephews to go see, I don't know what it was some little show, and they got to buy a little something there, and make those memories, and those are things that you are actually putting in protective factors without you knowing it. So do those things instead of just, you know, opening the cash or writing the check or whatever. Find ways to empower your child. I'll show you a slide on that that's going to explain that. Disconnect to stay connected. Get rid of the phone. Just, you know, have a phone, have it at night when, you know, 9 o'clock, all phones off. I know I need to do a better job of that. I'm just saying, because I spend a lot of time on Facebook. I love just to swipe, you know, or just scroll, because it's mindless. It's absolutely positively mindless just to sit there and scroll. And you're not thinking about anything. And it used to be the TV entertained me. Now I just scroll. But for some of our kids, when they get on those things, they see all these other things, and they're like, oh my God, they've got such a great life, but I don't. And they're getting mixed messages, and their social media is totally different. Like, I should be doing this with, you know, sending pictures, or I should be drinking, I should be doing these things, when they shouldn't be doing that at all, but that's what they see. So disconnect to stay connected. Learn to be firm, fair, and consistent. So my mom raised 3 children. She was a single parent, and she made us #1 priority. Okay, #1 priority was that there was, I mean, she worked and she made sure that we had food, clothing, and I'm trying to think what else. Just love, nurturing, all that good stuff. But those were the biggest things. You know, we didn't go to bed hungry. We didn't wake up. We went to school. We always had breakfast. We had our clothing, we had our basic needs were always met. We also came from a safe and secure environment. Even though it was a single parent, we always felt safe, we always felt secure. Mom and Dad might have hated each other, but we never knew that as kids. They never fought. It was like, Tony, I get the house and kids, you can come visit anytime you want. It was a great relationship, and this is way, way back in the day. Now we have all this shared parenting where kids have to go from one house to another house. I mean, that is so difficult for me to get up in the morning and come to work when I switch between 2 different buildings. And I'm like, what do I need here? What do I need there? It's difficult. Whereas if we instead had the parent get up and move, like if you want shared parenting, that's fine. You spend a week in the house with the kid this week, and next week mom comes in. It's called, I think, bird nesting is something like that. It's a new term. Great idea. Or better yet, just be amicable towards each other, because it's important for the kids. But be fair. So my mom, all 3 kids, always spent the same amount of, you know, for Christmas or whatever, or same experiences. If mom would pick me up to go for lunch. When I was in elementary school, she'd pick my brother up in middle school or my sister up in high school to go do something with them. It's just being fair and being consistent. Anytime you break a rule, stay. One kid can't get away with it. You just can't do that. You gotta all be consistent. Cultivate communication skills, especially with phones. Kids don't know how to communicate. I met someone today, met a young person, and it was great. She like switched the stuff out of her one hand, extended her hand out, made eye contact with me, said hello, it's nice to meet you, and I'm like, God, your mom's awesome, and I hope she's still here. So anyhow, and she would be our mental health specialist in the district, but I was like, this is awesome. How old is your daughter? 12? Yeah, it was fantastic. So I was like, yes, those are lifelong skills kids need. Those are interview skills. Those are things that those kids need to get through life. So cultivate those skills. Also be present in your child's life. There are times that it's difficult and we might not be present, but we have to, we have to put those things aside and be present and in that moment for our children, especially when they need us. Sometimes we need to be their scapegoat. We need to know that if they go to a party and there's alcohol or there's something going on where they feel uncomfortable, you need to have a code word where where you might text them a message and say, hey, did you clean your room? And if they text back, yep, my room's clean, everything's okay. And if they're like, no, I did not, and then they're like, okay, then I'm coming to get you because I told you you had to clean the room. And so that's a great way to slip in a code for your kids to protect them, so if they're ever in a situation that they can come out. Now, get out of that situation. Let's say, for an example, their kids in high school experiments with drugs, alcohol, or whatever. When's the best time to talk to them when when you find out, oh my God, my kid was drinking? When should you have that conversation with them about drinking? They were drinking that night. Should you do it that night?
The next morning.
Yeah, you need to do it the next morning. You need to calm down. You need to use your words. You need to do whatever you need to do to vent. But you need to realize that anything you say to them while they're under the influence of alcohol, all you're going to hear is wah, 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 wah. They're not going to hear words you're saying. And then they might look at you and laugh, and then it's better just to wait and also not say anything that's hurtful that you can't take back. I feel for kids who say, yeah, my mom says I'm going to be a drug addict. That's painful, very painful. Kids don't want to disappoint their parents. They really don't. So be present in their life. And the last one too, if you need help, ask for it. There's a ton of places to get help. Like you said, we have mental health specialists now in all of our buildings. So we have counselors in our buildings. We have emails. You can reach out via email. I meet people, sometimes I'll meet them at Panera. I'll meet them somewhere outside of the district just to talk because they need to hear something. In your bags, you have lots of resources of things and lots of ways to get information that's in your bag. So just reach out and ask. And the one thing about empowering youth, our kids we need to empower them. They need to develop a sense of empathy. They have to learn how to problem solve. These are all social skills, and develop assertiveness. And then we all have emotional bank accounts. And we need to build those up. Sometimes I'll see a kid and I can just tell they need a hug, and I'll give them a hug, and I'll be like, you need 12 of these. To be mentally healthy, you need 12 hugs a day. And they're like, well, I only got one. And I'm like, okay, so here's 2. Now be on your way and go find some more hugs, or whatever. And so we talk to them about that, but we also have the emotional bank account. It can be something as simply as saying to a kid, hey, I like those shoes. Those are really cool. Those are new. I like those. Those are neat. That is a deposit into their emotional bank account. But then they look at one thing that comes online that's negative about them, like you're so fat or you should go kill yourself. What have we just done to that bank account? Totally depleted it. The other thing though, with giving kids deposits into those banks, you have to be real and genuine about them. Kids know when you're blowing smoke. I'm just saying. They know when you are blowing smoke. So you really want to make sure that you are honest and sincere. Always applaud someone's effort, not someone's grade. So, hey, you got an A, that's awesome. I love it, you're a straight A student, but they might not be a straight A student as this coursework gets harder, but say, hey, you know what, I noticed you worked really hard on that test. Your effort was awesome. In a game, my mom would come to all my basketball games, and she was my #1 fan. Didn't know anything about basketball, never encouraged me to play, but she came to every single one of my games. I'd have a game in college, I'd be like, or high school, college, I'd be like, I was horrible. I'm like, Mom, I sucked. She's like, well, you look nice in your uniform. And I'm like, is that all you gotta say? She's like, yeah, it hung really nice on you. And I'm like, oh my God, you know? And I'm like, and then there were times as college would go on and I'd miss a free throw or whatever, and she'd be like, I thought maybe you could hustle a little bit more. And I'd be like, okay, and then she goes, I noticed your lips got blue because you were sucking air. Should you be practicing a little harder? You know, but my favorite was just, you look nice in your uniform, you know? Because you know, as the athlete, you know the mistakes you've made. So, you know, and so there's no sense in saying you made a mistake, you know? There's no sense in going over that. So, if you have any questions, please feel free to stay after. I know we took you a little long. We tried to run through it really quickly. You guys do have evaluation forms. If you fill those out, you can drop them out in the basket on the way out, right, Nancy? Awesome. We'll stay around, answer any questions. Well, that's it for the night.
Thank you.
Thank you.